to day 15, where we talk about the countif, and countif functions. Yesterday we looked at some if, and some ifs. Today we shall examine countif, and countifs. So let's go into the class, and I'll see you afterwards.
For the count functions mirror what we have in the sum and sum if functions. So if you got that correctly, you will get the count functions correctly as well, right? So let's start with the count functions. So let's assume we want to count. Now, some will add it up together, but count will give you the amount, right? The frequency, number of times it happened. So let's say we want to count the number of students, right? That are count number of students basically, right? So equals to counts. You can see count the number of cells in a range that contains numbers. So we'll clearly count the number of cells that contains numbers. If I didn't count A, right, it will calculate, it will count the number of cells that are not empty. So if you have a special character like a space or a semicolon or anything, you count that as well, right? So count A will count everything, right? All characters are not empty. While count will only count the ones that have number of cells that contain numbers, right? Numbers. Just have that in mind to count, right? So if you want to count this, how many students are in maths, we do this, we close the bracket, it gives us 13, right? And we can always drag it to the left and show that we have 13 students across board. So count will count the total amount of numbers in a particular range, right? So, for example, let's say I move this from 93 and I make it a apostrophe, for example. So now this turns to 12, right? Because it's not counting that as a number, because it's not a number, right? If I put a plus sign here, right, it's not counting that as a number, right? But if I change this from count to count A, like count all, and I put everything together, close the bracket, you see we count that as 13, right? Because count all will count every as long as it's not empty, right? Why count will they count the ones that are numbers? I hope we get that correctly. Count ifs, right? So just like count, as I mentioned, the counts, right? We want to count the frequency, right? So let's say we want to count how many students, right, got greater than or equals to 34 in mathematics, right? Or across all subjects, right? All I'll just do is equals to count if, right? The first is my range, right? This is my range, right? Next thing is comma, then criteria, right? Basically, I want less than or equals to 34, right? But you will notice that if you just do this, you will get an error. So if I do this, right, there's an error. Because for count if, your criteria needs to be in double quotation marks, right? That's how it is. For count if, right, it has to be in double quotation marks, a bit different from the others. So put our double quotation in front of our criteria and we close our button, right? So now you count those that are less than or equals to 34, right? So we can use this and copy it to the left, right? And if we want to maintain the same thing for we want to count it to those that are greater than 54, right? What we can do is we have to lock in our range, right? So we don't want this to move from 5 to 17. So the rule, we want it to maintain the rule of 5 to 17, even if we bring it down. So if we bring it down, right, all we have to just change here is we want to see those that are greater than 54, right? And we give us 8, and we can now drag it to the left as well, right? So it's very simple. I'll go over it again, right? So all we have to do, all we did was equals to count if, right? Selected our range, which was this, right? Comma, criteria, and I mentioned for count if and count ifs, the criteria to be in double quotation. So double quotation, what's greater than or equals to 34, close our quotation mark, close our brackets, and voila, which is greater than or less than anyone you want to do, right? So now let's use the same in the same metrics. Let's do for Nigeria, right? Now we have count ifs, right? We want to count those that scored less than or equals to 34 and I'm from Nigeria. So we're very specific, right? Those that got less than or equals to 34 and I'm from Nigeria. So what would it equals to count if, right? Count ifs. Now we're using 2. I count ifs. The first one is the criteria range 1, right? The first one is the score, right? Score in math, right? Which is this, right? Criteria range 1, right? And we want to test. Um, so what the criteria? It has to be less than, and remember I put it in double quotation marks, right? So less than or equals to 34. We close at double quotation mark. Next one is criteria range 2. So where the second criteria, right? That is here, the criteria range, which is country, right? I will lock the rows so we can move it across. Comma. What is the criteria 2? The criteria 2 is Nigeria, so we'll put it in double quotation marks as well, right? So Nigeria, right? We can close this, right? So now it counted the people that are from Nigeria that scored less than or equals to 24 in maths, and we can just drag it across and we see that for history and biology. So it's very simple, right? It's just following the syntax, right? And the only thing you need to know that's different from every other one is that for um for count and count is it has to be your criteria has to be in double quotation marks. So I hope that is clear. Thank you very much.
I hope that was straightforward enough, right? Count if, count ifs, and count ifs. Don't forget, when putting count ifs, your criteria needs to be in double quotation marks, right? Please make sure you subscribe, right? As follow us along this 31-day journey. Whether you're watching it live or you're watching it after we are done with 31 days, right? Make sure you subscribe to get notified for when we have more videos. Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow.